Are you wearing busyness as a badge of honor? Struggling to juggle work, family, and everything in between? Then today's episode is for you. I'm joined by Melissa Rueschhoff, a powerhouse attorney, military spouse, and advocate for intentional living. Melissa has managed a high-pressure legal career while raising a family and supporting military communities. Today, she shares how she transformed her packed schedule into one filled with freedom and harmony. We dive deep into why saying no can be one of the most powerful choices you make, how to clarify your true priorities, and how living with purpose can change everything. So if you're ready for a conversation that's going to inspire you to reclaim your time and focus on what truly matters, stay tuned. Welcome to Rad Mom Revival, the podcast for Christian moms seeking biblically based guidance for thriving through every stage of motherhood, from fertility to postpartum and beyond. I'm your host, Susan Gladstein, aka the Metabolism Maven, and as a mom of 6, I totally get it. The never-ending to-do list, the exhaustion, and that nagging mom guilt that comes anytime you try to take care of yourself. I've been there, but there is a better way, and I'm here with some mom hacks that are going to rock your world. Whether you're trying to start a family, get back in shape after having a baby, or finally losing that baby weight, even if your baby is getting their driver's license, I'm here to help. On this podcast, we dive deep into preparing your body for conception, navigating postpartum recovery, and creating a healthy lifestyle that your kids and grandkids will thank you for. If you're ready to have so much energy that your kids say, "Mom, you need to chill," then you've found your tribe. So grab your headphones and that never-ending pile of laundry, and let's get started. It's time for Rad Mom Revival. Ever feel like you're running on empty, barely keeping up with the kids, work, and all of the chaos of life? I get it. I've been there too. But what if you could actually have the energy to power through your day and feel less stressed in just 2 weeks? Sound like something you need? Then you should totally join our 14-day Energy Boost Challenge. You get real-life mom hacks to help you say goodbye to exhaustion and hello to feeling more like yourself again. Join us at radmomrevival.com because your kids get the best when you're at your best. I am super pumped to have, I call her Missy, Melissa Rueschhoff, with us today. I met her. Her husband was the wing commander at Luke Air Force Base where I was working, and I just got to know her in a very cool way. And we talked a lot about health and fitness and family and faith and all of the things. And so I wanted to bring her on today because she's super wildly busy with all the different hats that she plays. And we were chatting about finding balance and how our culture is not super supportive of balance. You know, we kind of wear busyness like this badge of honor, and really just kind of changing the culture, especially amongst women, where we're supporting one another to find balance, to say, I need to take a day off, or I'm not going to make it to dinner tonight. So thank you for being here with us. And I would just love if you kind of give me a little bit of insight. We were talking about like in the past where you had gone so long, like living by a calendar and very structured, and then kind of finding more freedom in that, and what epiphany that was for you. So could you tell me more about that in this quest of finding balance?
Yes, which is still a quest. First of all, thank you for having me on. Yes, so I met Susan a couple of years ago there in Phoenix, and by the time I had moved there, I was already in my late 40s. And so, as you and I were just talking, it dawned on me that from the time I was 14 or 15, I had always worked or been in school or both. And I meet my husband, who's in the military, and I did not grow up military, so that world was completely foreign to me. But we get married and we moved to Korea, and I was 30 years old. And it was the first time in my 30 years of life that I had not been in school, working, or both. And I had accepted as soon as I moved over there, because of course I can't just sit still and not practice law. I had accepted a job as the athletic director and trainer for the Hawk Center over there. So in other words, I was coordinating all the fitness programs, all the fitness classes, and then the personal training program for the Health and Wellness Center over there at Osan Air Base in South Korea. And it meant that I was teaching classes from 9 to 12, Monday through Friday. But I remember getting there in the first few days, really, that I would get off at noon, and I'd already had a full morning. I'd already worked out. I'd already, taught classes, made money, and done my quote work. And I looked in the mirror and thought, I have an afternoon free. What does this look like? And I think it was twofold. One, it was because it's my personality that I do like to be busy, but I like to be busy doing things that matter. They have to matter. And I think that's something I've learned over the course of my life is when I say yes to something, I'm saying no to something else. And so I've had to be very intentional about limiting the number of board positions I sit on, limiting how much time I spend during the day doing any one thing, and being able to say, just like you said, no, that's not going to work for me today. It might next week or it might a different day, but that's not going to work for me today. And so there was really this freedom in being able to have those afternoons free. And at first I kind of felt guilty. I should be doing something. I should be busy. I should be working or volunteering. And then I realized it's okay. And I think it was partly being in that space and giving myself that, what I call space for grace, and saying it's okay. And it was also being in a foreign country where I realized this is an American thing that we have told ourselves we have to be busy all the time. And that they're, like you said, it really is almost like a badge of honor. How busy can we be? How much can we accomplish? And I've seen it in big cities, and I've also seen it in smaller cities. It was really nice to kind of take a breath and realize I don't have to be busy all of the time. But when you talk about balance, I choose to call it harmony, because there are some days. There was a day last week that I worked 10 hours because I was working on a time sensitive matter for a client that I care dearly about, and a case that I really want to see come to fruition soon. And then the next day I went to Pilates. I went for a run with the dog. I got the kids to and from school. And so it's a harmony, because it's definitely not at any given day a 25% this, 25%, so I try in my mind to balance mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional, but it's never an equal balance.
So first of all, can we just really pause to appreciate how you were talking about when you look at something, you want to do something that matters to you? Because how many times in our schedule are we saying yes to things that just don't matter? But we get wrapped up in it. I'm really guilty about this, especially if I have company coming to my house and I'm so worried. I will spend 8 solid hours cleaning and scrubbing my house, and I've never once been to someone's house where their clutter or the looks of their house, I never thought one thing about it. But I will work myself up into this whole stress thing about how it has to look a certain way and whatever. And it's all about how you feel while you get there anyways. Now, I will say, I will notice if somebody's toilet is disgusting. So that is something that I still prioritize. But I love that just sort of recentering and being very intentional about, am I saying yes to things that matter the most?
Right. And I'll be honest, you talk about the cleaning. People joke when they walk in, they say, did somebody stage your house? I like my house clean, and I like it neat and organized. And that for me is a peace of mind. It gives me peace to be able, if I want to do meditation or if I want to work at home, it gives me peace to have a house like that. But it can't be something, because the cleaning piece doesn't bring me joy, but having it look like that, having it feel like that, having it just be my safe haven, that matters to me. And so it really, to your point, it has to be something that matters to you. And if it doesn't, then you have to ask yourself, why am I doing it? And, I don't think there's anybody that says they only do things that matter to them. I've been to, financial workshops with, multimillionaire, billionaire folks that say, look, you're not ever going to not have to do some of the mundane tasks. You're still going to have to be in charge of some of those. We all have to pay bills. We all have to, make sure the house is clean to some extent. We all have to get the kids to school or take the dog out or make dinner. I mean, those are things that are just part of living. But beyond those, you can ask yourself, what is it not that just brings me joy, but that gives me a sense of purpose? And then be intentional about filling your calendar with those things.
I think a few years ago, I learned a very valuable lesson about that. The things that don't bring you joy, again, thinking in the sense of like, we think, well, I've got to do this. It's busyness is a badge of honor, but like, where can you outsource that? For me, I don't love doing dishes. So typically, when my husband's not home, because that's kind of our trade off, I cook, he cleans. Well, on nights he's on shift at the fire station, I eat on paper plates. Like that's my outsourcing because it's the one thing that I hate doing, but it brings me joy just to throw it away and be done with it. Sure, it's wasteful, but like it's one less thing that doesn't bring me joy that I don't have to do. But it took me a long time to just even accept that it was okay to say, yeah, I'm gonna eat on a paper plate, or I'm gonna outsource this thing that I don't, I have a friend that gets her laundry done by a lady because she hates laundry so much. Okay, if you can do that, by all means.
Yes, giving yourself permission.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree. There's a lot that's been studied that says if there are people that are experts in certain areas and you are not, and or don't enjoy those, then you should rely on them because it gives you back that time. And time is money, and time is value, and time is joy. And so I don't think, even when you're talking about it, I don't think you should apologize. But I recognize that it caused you a little angst to even make that concession. But that's okay. You're not hurting anybody else. You're doing it because it's the right thing for you. And it does bring you that joy. And it gives you that time back, with your daughter, it gives you that time back with yourself, maybe even to sleep.
Exactly. It's so important. So in thinking about I heard this girl that was kind of like talking about how she color coded her calendar to kind of like point out, the things that were family oriented, things that she did not love, she made a different color. And then when she looked at it, she realized so much of her calendar was full of the stuff that she either didn't enjoy doing, didn't bring her joy, didn't help her reach her goals. And it was really eye opening to kind of like pan back and look at, well, how can I either outsource this or give this thing up? What are some things that you do? I know you say like it's not always 25, 25, 25, but what are some things that you do that maybe could help somebody else that was like me, where I didn't realize how much of my schedule was full of stuff that did not bring me joy until I
Yeah,
practiced this exercise.
that is a great question. So, a couple things. I do have a calendar similar to that, but I don't have I like to do this. I don't like to do this color coding. I have one color for our family calendar, one for my work calendar, one for my personal calendar, and one for my boards, the boards I sit on, volunteer work. And so I can kind of look at that. And then there are times sometimes I have to deconflict, but I can see those. The only time that something will, and it depends, right? Because on any given day, if I have something work related that needs to get done, that's going to get done because I love what I do. I love my job. I love my clients in my cases, or I wouldn't take them on. But then the next day, there might be something. My son might have a football game, or my daughter might have a dance performance, and I will be there. I will show up. I mean, that's the one thing I think I heard early on is show up. Just showing up is what matters. When I was working, my background is special victims prosecution before we started Whole on Law Partners, before I started working with women entrepreneurs. And I went to a lot of conferences where I would speak on eradicating sex trafficking, or I would be sitting in the audience listening as people were talking about different parts of the criminal justice system. And the number one thing that differentiates somebody being at risk, a child being at risk versus not, and that's at risk for dropping out of school, joining a gang, becoming addicted to alcohol or drugs, basically becoming part of that criminal justice system. The number one thing is not socioeconomic. It is not about whether the parents work or don't work. It's not about what they're doing outside of school. It's whether the family has dinner together 4 more nights a week. And so, as much as is possible, we have dinner together as a family 4 more nights a week. And sometimes that means reading at 4 o'clock. Sometimes that means reading at 8 o'clock. But that to me, you have your non negotiables. And that to me is a non negotiable that we have time. Now, sometimes if it's a crazy busy week, it might mean that we have breakfast together 4 more mornings a week, because I think it's less about the dinner as much as it is sitting across the table and asking, how was your day? What's something great that happened today? What's something awful that happened today? We do highs and lows. We call them highs and lows, or peaks and valleys, whatever you want to call it. But that's important. answer your question, I think it's knowing what is important. There's going to be urgent things, and sometimes those urgent things have to be addressed. But as much as is possible, the important things that are non-negotiables should always come first, whether you color code it on a calendar or you make that pact, with your family that we will be here at this time. The other thing I've found is if there's something that I might see a bigger purpose. For example, I'd be volunteering at the school. Yes, it helps out the school, it helps out my child, but I just don't have time that week. It's okay to say, not right now. It's not no, it's not right now. And then look in the future and say, but I could do this time. And so it's being comfortable saying, not right now or not today. Or, I mean, if it's something that you're not at all interested in and you don't see the value for you, your family, the people you love and hold dear, or the community at large, it's okay to say no and just flat out say no. But I calendar everything, and I will even put in there yoga or Pilates, or weightlifting, whatever exercise I'm doing. I will even put on my list to do meditation or Bible study for the day. And everything else that's a set meeting or a set appointment, then obviously I work around that. And so I like the freedom of scheduling everything myself and having my own calendar and being able to work around it. I've never been an 8 to 5 person. I mean, even when I was trying cases, when I was doing, capital murder cases, if the judge wanted me there at 8 o'clock, I might be there till 8 p.m. But then the next week when I'm not in trial, I might be working 4 hours a day. And that's kind of how I've liked to do it. So I think it's giving yourself permission. I think it's finding what works for you, knowing your non-negotiables. And then when urgent things pop up, being able to come back, because you've already then established these are the important things. And being able to go to those people or to whatever that is that's scheduled and say, all right, that might have to take a back seat for just today, but it doesn't change that that's important to me.
I love that you talk about making sure that you understand what is your priority, because I think there's so much of my life I was more or less just working in operating from a reactive mode, was never in a really proactive mode. And it really took in my current marriage just sort of like sitting back and saying like, what is our family like mission statement? What are our values? What are our non-negotiables? And unless you actually sit and think about that, then in my case, I was just spinning my wheels and feeling exhausted all the time because I was constantly just responding to fires instead of like really being very clear about what are my priorities, where are they going to fit into the schedule, and then being able to say no to the things that don't align with that.
Yeah. And I think part of it takes time, experience, age, maturity. I don't know many 20-year-olds that would have this conversation. I mean, I do think the next generation has done a better job at balancing, if we want to use the word balancing or harmonizing or saying no. I do see it. I see it in some of the younger folks that we've hired, even at our firm. They are able to say, I need a mental health day or I need to take a break. And I know I was not good at that in my 20s. And so for me, it's been an evolution. It wasn't an epiphany at 20, 30, or 40. It was definitely an evolution. And even yesterday, I was talking to a detective I'm working on. I'm still doing some victim advocacy work for some of my clients. And I was talking to a detective that runs a special victims unit. And as we were talking, I realized how much I missed that. I've loved being the voice. And I did it in all these different states, being the voice for the voiceless, being the voice for these children. And I kind of had this moment of, do I want to do more of that? Do I want to? And what I realized, and I think again, it takes time and experience to say this, but I would be trading. And so it's you say yes to something, you say no to something, because if I was back in court, I would be in court for 8 hours a day. And so it's making that intentional, it's all about intentionality, the intentional decision to say, no, it's not right for me at this stage of my career to be in the prosecutorial role, but I could do trainings and teachings or serve on boards and help in a different capacity.
And I think that that's what maybe we are creating, hopefully creating this new culture and generation of people who are doing things differently and better than we did. Like that's my whole mission in life, is to create
Yes.
a legacy that your kids and grandkids will thank you for, one that got good priorities and balance and health and all of the things. So I do hope for that. What's maybe a message I think sometimes, especially as parents, it's like we've gone through all these trials and tribulations, and we think if we tell our kids, we're going to save them for all of this stuff and this, muck that we had to go through. And a lot of times, like they have to just learn on their own. But let's just pretend that there's a young mom that's listening to this and you're able to give them sort of like your 20 or 30 years of experience into like here's something you can do tomorrow to shortcut all of this stuff, all this muck that I went through. What's something that you would tell someone?
I would probably say know your why. And there are so many books written. I think there's even a book called that. But know your why. Why are you making the decisions that you're making? And sometimes when you talk about if it's for a young mom, they're just starting out and they are really living paycheck to paycheck and they're trying to figure out how am I going to make ends meet. Their why might be because I want to make sure my child has a roof over their head and food on the table. And I respect that. And that's not it. I don't feel like going to work today. I'm not going to go to work. Their why is very clear. As they grow older and hopefully transition into different jobs, more established careers, then their why might be because I want to be a good example for my child, or because I want to spend more time with my child. Or, I mean, people make decisions for lots of different reasons, but to know your why, that would be my biggest piece of advice. And, I think you've heard me talk at some of the women's symposiums, and I talk about what is your purpose, and I've heard it said, and I did not make this up, so I cannot take credit, but I heard it said by a pastor that I adore. And he said, if you don't know what your purpose is, think about whatever that thing is that you are so excited about and you cannot wait to get out of bed and go do it or work on it or be around it. That might be your purpose. Or conversely, what is the thing that makes you so mad that you say, gosh, somebody has got to fix this? This is an atrocity. This is an injustice. It's got to be changed. That somebody might be you. And so somebody's why might be very different at 20 and 30 and 40 and 50. But if you know your why, then everything else can fall into place. And that's where you can be intentional about your calendar. You can be intentional about your time. You can be intentional about carving out. I mean, I can tell you I know some single parents that their time with their children are driving them from one place to the next, but they have some phenomenal conversations during that time. And so they won't take work calls during that time. And they will just sit and have a very candid, and sometimes it's even easier when you're not sitting across the table. You can have some really hard conversations with your kids and they can confide in you, conversely, about some really hard topics. But knowing why your day looks the way it does, why your priorities are set the way they are, and why you're filling your time with whatever you're filling it with. And that would probably be my only advice. And again, it's not going to be linear. It's not necessarily the same thing at 20 as it is at 60.
For sure. I wish I had somebody, I think, to tell me. I think I didn't learn about your why till, I don't know, it was maybe 35 or something. But even now, getting a sort of do-over, I have older kids and then I start all over with Emma. And there's something that's pretty magical because, parents will always tell you, oh, it goes so quickly. And when you're young and in the thick of it, and like you just can't wait to get through the potty training or whatever the stage is that you just want to accelerate to get through, you're like, yeah, whatever, you're old, you don't know what you're talking about. But like, I got the beauty and the gift of knowing how fast the time goes and to really, yes, be more intentional. Of course, I'm older than I was, and my kids were young and I was in my 20s and stressed to the max and not healthy and struggling to sleep and all the things. But I love that advice of just like figuring out whatever your why is. I recently sort of leaned more into like we're all given different unique talents and gifts, and something that seems maybe easy to us, or I don't know. In my case, it's like, well, I don't really see what the value of that is because that's just who I am. Maybe it's your experiences or things you've learned or whatever. Really leaning into like you have unique gifts, unique talents, unique experiences. They're going to make the difference in someone else's life. And that's like a big message that I was just like, yeah, let's slow clap for that.
Yes. I did a Bible study on spiritual gifts, and it's by far been my favorite. So, fruits of the Spirit and spiritual gifts have been my two favorite studies ever for that exact reason. because one, it's good to identify what are your spiritual gifts. And then it's good to identify those that are lacking and then have people in your life that help fill that gap. That's part of that self-awareness and self-reflection that, again, I think comes with some age and some maturity. And the earlier you can do it, the better. But you're right. You're right. If we, yes. So separate from how you live your day, what do you have that you can offer other people? And sometimes it's being a good listener. Other times it's being an advocate. Other times it's, helping. I mean, it's almost like the Enneagram. I love the Enneagram. It does the same thing. I'm an 8. I'm a challenger. And so, sometimes that's good and sometimes that's not good. But I tend to ask why all the time. And I tend to ask, I'm very justice oriented. And so that's why when I talk about being the voice for the voiceless, that's something that I can give. I love being around people that are very different from me because I learn from them. And I see parts of them I don't have, or maybe I see parts of them that I admire, or maybe there's a little inkling of it and I can grow that piece of me. But I think that's part of just continuing to learn who you are and see how you can show up in the world.
I love that. Well, before we jump off here, is there anything else that you would want to tell moms at whatever stage of motherhood that they're at, just to encourage and inspire them?
Yes, find a mentor and mentor somebody. So have somebody that you can go to that you admire. Make sure you obviously admire their ethics, their values, their morals, and it's something you believe in. But then lean on them. And not just one person, but several, because you'll get different perspectives. And then conversely, people always think they don't have enough experience or enough age or enough wisdom to be a mentor to somebody, but that's not true. I mean, somebody in the early 20s can be a mentor, even to somebody older than them. And so I would say, if you have the bandwidth, and don't add one more thing to your plate, but if you have the bandwidth, find somebody that you can mentor and have a mentor. And that can be through a small group Bible study. That can be through a gym where you go work out, a yoga studio, Pilates studio, a mom group. It doesn't matter, but have your tribe, your core people, and then really lean on those that you trust, that you value, that you admire, and that you respect to help you through this, because no one should go through it alone. I mean, you and I talked before we started the podcast about how mothering can be isolating and it can be the hardest job in the world. I mean, I've taught at law schools. I've practiced criminal law, I've practiced civil law. I've taught fitness classes. And I can tell you being home with my kids was the hardest job of any of the jobs I've had. And so just knowing they're not alone and there are others that you can lean on that can be there for you, to laugh with and to cry with.
I love that. I think that maybe if we learned anything about 2020 is like, you're not meant to do life alone. Like, you're meant to do life in community. So if you can influence someone else's life and vice versa, like, that's what we're created to do. So if you're listening to this and you feel alone, you need to come be part of our tribe.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you're super, super busy, and I appreciate you carving out some time in your busy calendar for me and to spread some inspiration and love to women listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's always good to see you.
Yeah, you too. Hey there. Thanks for tuning in to Rad Mom Revival. I hope you're feeling inspired and ready to reclaim your Rad Mom status. If you enjoyed the show, do me a favor, subscribe and leave me a review, and share it with your mom friends who desperately need some me time. I'd totally be honored if their me time was spent hiding in the bathroom listening to this podcast. I'd also love to get connected if we aren't already. Find me on social media and join our awesome tribe at radmomrevival.com. Until next time, keep embracing the chaos, finding joy in the little things, and living your best Rad Mom life.
Thanks for listening.